A coffee ground injury is no joke.
No,
is that from Connect Roasters?
It is
That's
not.
the morale blend?
Oh, God, it's not. There's no morale here. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Away Games. It's a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast. My name's Kevin McCaffrey, and I'm here with your good friend, Adam Amawala. What's up, Adam?
How you doing? Happy New Year. Is this going to be the Cubs year? Cubs in 2022? Will they play?
It's definitely not the Cubs year. I would say it may be. I would hope. I think the ceiling is at a Cubs year would be pretty cool. I think they'll play at some point, but if we say they might not, Adam, Rob Manfred might have us fired for having critical words about him.
Boy, it is so good that we do not have the following that would warrant Rob Manfred's attention, because he would have gotten rid of us a long time ago.
Rob Manfred a bitch. He is I'll email it to him, just that on a little MP3. It's hard to think of a more like complete beta move to me than being the head of a sport. So basically Ken Rosenthal got fired from MLB Network, and it was over critical words he had for Rob Manfred. Adam, do you know when these critical words were from?
I actually don't. Was this like wasn't it about his handling of the pandemic like a year and a half ago?
Yeah, this is from 2020. I'll read it to you. And by the way, it wasn't even on MLB Network. It was in an article on The Athletic. On The Athletic, and this is according to I believe Andrew Marchand. And what Rosenthal said is, Manfred and the owners need to figure it out, and quickly. Most owners will be in the game longer than most players, enabling them to eventually recoup their losses from 2020, then profit from their franchise's resale values. That's how ownership works. When people say, this is my aside, when people say like the total valuation of a team, for instance, say if you bought the team for a little less than $1 billion and it's worth over $3 billion now, Ricketts, this is some of the value is the resale afterwards. So, Rosenthal said most owners will be in the game longer than most players, enabling them to recoup their losses from 2020, then profit from the resale values. Meanwhile, Manfred is supposed to be the adult in the room, a leader with a sense of the game's place in our society, the caretaker of the sport. If he blows this, it will define him. That should be enough incentive for him to strike a deal, period. Even that had an if in it. It said if he blows it.
Yeah, that's not that bad. By the way, where can people find us shitting on Rob Manfred if they want to?
I mean, in person, if you see us, please mask up and we'll talk all the shit in the world. We're both in Queens, New York right now, but also they can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Away Games Pod. And yeah, we're still tweeting even though there's no baseball.
How about this? How about this for an obvious shirt? You know I'm a big t-shirt idea guy. How about a cab? All commissioners are bastards.
100%. Perfect. We can market it to probably the most hardcore group of our listeners. I think that would fit all their circles. I think. Yeah, man. It's like what a beta that this guy is the commissioner of a sport and is still hurting from what is a hypothetical criticism, even in some sort, from years ago in a publication that is different and unaffiliated with the place that Rosenthal just got let go from.
Manfred is the quintessential, like, even if you don't at me, I'm going to search my own name and then get mad at what you're saying about me.
Yeah, Ricky Gervais, basically. Gervais is a big one of those for sure. Yeah, it's amazing. And it's amazing that he found a way to, and Ken Rosenthal, by the way, almost, I mean, in terms of baseball reporters, approval rating almost at the very top. Like, who doesn't like Ken Rosenthal? He likes baseball. He's informed. He's one of the better reporters out there. And part of the reason is because he's willing to call a spade in a situation like this. Yes,
if Bob Nightingale were the person
yes,
who was the subject of this, no one would be backing him.
Yeah, and Manfred is finding a way to put baseball in the news in a bad way while baseball doesn't exist. How fucking bad at your job are you? Your sport doesn't exist. That's an F to begin with right now. But then beyond that, how are you fucking up when nothing's happening? It's amazing.
Well, I mean, I think from what we know of Rob Manfred, his favorite thing is baseball not happening.
That's, asked and answered, counselor. That's right. That's so. I mean, I guess he's doing a good job of that. So anyway, that's one baseball thing that happened to talk about on our first of the 2022 podcast.
I walked right past Ken Rosenthal when I was at the World Series, and he's short. He's a short man.
He's a short man. I think in his Twitter bio it says 5'4.5". I think is he's throwing it right out there. He knows people are talking about it.
You know what? Height doesn't measure heart. How about that?
No, that's true, and that's good branding for the one bit of good news before. That's the Marcus Stroman brand, correct?
Mm-hmm. I think since the last time we recorded a podcast, Marcus Stroman has had a child.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he had a kid. Congrats to Marcus Stroman for and what good baseball player timing on that. I mean, I know there's no baseball right now, but he had that had that baby right in the most dead of dead zones in the baseball season. That's a professional.
Absolutely. What other baseball things have been on your mind? Is there much to discuss here?
Well, the things to discuss are, I think, a little Carlos Correa talk we can do, and then Sahadev Sharma. Speaking of good writers, good baseball reporters who work for The Athletic, he had I figured we could go beat by beat through. He had 5 predictions for the 2022 Chicago Cubs that we could touch upon.
Yeah, it's amazing what in a time where there's literally nothing going on because it's not allowed to unless you're Justin Verlander, apparently. There have been some rumblings about Carlos Correa. Do you want to share that little tidbit in relation to the Cubs?
So speaking of Rosenthal, he put out there that he still thinks it's not, the Cubs would not be the betting favorite right now because once we come out of this lockout with the new collective bargaining agreement, he thinks Correa is there's going to be enough teams that have the money to offer Correa totally what he wants. So probably 10 years in excess of what Seeger got. So 10 years, $330 million plus, something like that. Also, one thing that might happen after this and probably should happen is that the luxury tax threshold should go up a bit. So that might mean more teams are in the bidding than they are even now. So while Rosenthal was mentioned that he doesn't see the Cubs as a betting favorite, there's other things like Carlos Correa was reposting videos of there were like Christmas carolers talking, like singing a song. I believe it was to In Excelsis Gloria. Did you see that?
I did see that. Yes.
Was that a Danny Rocket jam from Cubs Twitter music guy?
It may have been. I know Danny Rocket is the main Cubs parody cover guy. Mm-hmm. The Weird Al of Cubs Twitter, if you will.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, and he. So and they put Correa's name in there and he retweeted that. It seems like the Cubs, there is substantial evidence basically that the Cubs would be into something like a 7-year deal in the $240 million-ish range for Correa, possibly with some opt-outs. And yeah, I mean, it's like, it's interesting, right? I mean, to think even now that there actually is a chance, however big it is, that the Cubs will be in on Correa, and it seems like there's mutual interest there.
And I wouldn't think that there were a chance if not for the Cubs having signed Stroman right before everything stopped, because to that point, I think everybody was like, oh, they're just going to actively fuck us and put that same lineup from last year out on the field opening day. So I do think it's possible. I mean, are you of the mindset that the Cubs should sign Correa regardless of what he wants? Or do you think that the 6, 7, 8 year contract is more reasonable than 10 or 11 years?
I mean, if I was the Cubs, I'm definitely trying to go 6, 7, 8 and go big on it, and possibly give him an opt out, because as we've said on this podcast before, I think how the Cubs are set up right now, sure, there's people in the farm system we're excited about, but outside of Brendan Davis, the impact guys aren't going to be being impactful really for several years yet, and that's if things go well. So you almost have to treat this next 3 years as its own completely independent window, I think, Right. So yeah, I think we said going into this, what you need in this offseason to begin with is a top level starter and a top level shortstop. So they got the top level starter. So yeah, now, I mean, there's Correa, there's Story, And I think you probably should do that, even if it's not the way I would have gone at the shortstop position to begin with. Yeah, I think that would make it would make a ton of sense. And the Cubs have almost backed themselves into a corner where I'm optimistic about them being in on Correa in a real way, where I'm like,
Yeah.
it's the only thing that makes sense from a baseball perspective.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, obviously, there are other names that have been floated around that were connected to the Cubs, even speculatively, if that's a
Yes.
word. One of those players retired, which I don't think anyone expected, Kyle Seeger, and that
Right.
very much caught me off guard. Like he's coming off a pretty damn good year,
I think it was
and is clearly
35
someone.
homers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the least, you would think he would have gotten like a 3-year deal somewhere, 2 3 year deal. I don't know. Maybe he just. I believe the statement was like from his wife, through her Twitter.
Yeah.
It would be very cool, given that he's a career Mariner and has never made the playoffs, if like he's retired, they have an injury at third base, and they like coax him out of retirement and then have a playoff run. That would be pretty.
For one last run, and then Felix Hernandez joins somehow in the bullpen or something.
Throwing lefty.
Yeah.
Too many miles on that right arm.
Yeah, exactly. That would be great. And the Mariners were like close to the playoffs. We're extremely close to breaking the North American longest major North American sports. The longest playoff drought there is right now is the Mariners, weirdly, and they were so close to breaking that last year. And Kyle Seeger, had an underrated career where he piled up nearly 40 wins above replacement over I think just a touch over a decade, all with Seattle. And it's like, that's a really good player. It's a really good player for a long time with one team. So yeah, it was surprising to see him go out like that.
He and his brother certainly had different off seasons.
Yeah, significantly different money coming in for sure. And speaking of retirements, old friend Cameron Maybin also announced his retirement, so he's moving on too. But and I think like, how do you feel about Correa in general? Like about the Cubs, the possibility of Cubs signing Correa in terms of how much do you feel like it might actually happen, and how much do you want it, etc. Or is there another way you'd want them to go?
I think I had kind of just decided a few years ago that I didn't want to have to root for anybody from that Astros team, because I find them to all be incredibly arrogant and have shown no real like contrition at all. If anything, that whole like, oh, we're the victims and now it's us against the world. It's like, well, it is you against the world because you cheated.
Yeah, almost more than the cheating to me, because it seems like all the players on the other teams understood that this was beyond the pale in like when stacked up against other kinds of cheating that players do. So I'll trust the other players on that for the most part. But I understand, and I can sort of see a world where you go down that slippery slope and oops, we're cheating more than other teams are. It's always a gray area anyway. It seems like they went past that. But yeah, being such dicks about it afterwards is the thing that is the most unpleasant thing. And Carlos Correa is one of them. When you look at there've been breakdowns of these numbers. People went through and like listened for the hit of the trash can, all that stuff. It seems like Correa didn't even really use the cheating. No,
I don't think so. And it's obvious that he's an incredible player and will continue to be wherever he plays, without trash cans.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that as like a huge point in his favor even necessarily, but it's just weird he was such a dickbag about it afterwards when it's like, you weren't even like one of the main cheating guys. It didn't seem like he cheated that much when it was broken down, if at all. So it's like, it's bizarre he was such a wanker. It's just
he was a real wanker.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of his profile and also like the kind of swagger that he has, I could see him being a fan favorite and someone who like kind of takes the place of Javi as the guy who is very cocky, but in a way that if he's on your team, you love it. Like, wasn't Correa last year doing the thing where like if he hit a bomb, he would stop and like look at a fake watch on his wrist? Like he'll do shit like that. If you're playing against him, you're like, fuck this guy. But if he's on your team, you love it.
Yeah, he was doing that in the playoffs for sure. He and I think Rodriguez on Boston, I think, had a little back and forth, but they were both into it, because Rodriguez walking after he struck out Correa was doing the watch thing on the way off, and Correa was like, "Fine, that's cool," So that's good. And Yeah, and so you were at a point where you didn't want it, but now are you just like
Now I just want the Cubs to be good, and
yeah.
I've looked past it.
Yeah, and
Like honestly, and I don't think any of us should have to make these calculations, but like cheating at baseball is bad, and the Astros' reaction to it was bad.
yeah.
But if you're giving me the option between signing someone like Carlos Correa or the Cubs trading for Aroldis Chapman or signing
Mm-hmm.
Marcell Ozuna or someone like that,
Mm-hmm.
I want no part of that. I don't ever want to have to do that again. Like
Yeah.
I would much rather have someone who did like a bad baseball thing than a bad human thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And for a comparison that's maybe closer to relevant in this moment, a guy like Trevor Bauer, who is a good pitcher, but you don't. I never want. And I don't think we're in danger of this, knock on wood, but I never want to see Trevor Bauer in a Cubs jersey or any jersey, really. But yeah, Correa, I think like this is a guy who the main problem with him is he's annoying, so it's like I'm fine with guys who are annoying and put up 5 WAR every year at shortstop. He was the leader in the majors defensively last year for defensive runs saved at 21. So yeah, I think like I'm looking at it and I would have I would have put Javi there for less money and less years and split that money that Correa would take and go elsewhere with it and strengthen up more of the team. But now that we're here, it's basically Correa story, or you do some, or you're trying to work out some trade for someone who's very good defensively for a year or two. I've seen some Cubs Twitter get into the idea of Nick Ahmed. I
mean, he's great defensively, but does he excite you in any way offensively?
Not only does he not excite you offensively, I beg the people who are so into Nick Ahmed, the idea of a Nick Ahmed stopgap, please go look at his offensive numbers. He's horrific. It's not average or kind of bad. Yeah. It's a huge negative. This is not that the Cubs should not, and there's not upside left in that bat. It does not, he's not young, I would much rather, if we're doing something like that, I'd rather trade for Kim in San Diego, at least, who has the offensive pedigree from Korea. But yeah, please no Nick Ahmed. Let's just get off. Let's forget about that train. So anyway, that leaves us in a place where I think like your big market team, you have no shortstop. The best shortstop is here. Do it.
Right. And the other thing is, it's kind of the thing that I wonder about the Bears a lot of the time, where it's like, are the McCaskies just like trying to put on the producers? Like, do they want the Bears to be bad? Yeah. Because they know that people are still going to come out to Soldier Field and spend a bunch of money. Like, I'm very curious to know, like in a scenario where the Cubs really didn't do anything this offseason, how bad the numbers would have been at Wrigley next year. And I guess what I'm getting at is like, if the Cubs do sign Correa, and even if they don't add a lot of other pieces and they've signed Stroman and Correa, you have to think that Wrigley's going to be packed again, right?
Yeah, and I think it'll be packed anyway at the beginning of the year. Like almost no matter what happens. I think it'll be packed early, but who knows for how long. And I did do a little number crunching of my own. I think even we're not haters. I mean, I guess that's up to you listening to decide, but I think we're not haters. And I loving the Cubs, but
we're just ruthless pragmatists.
Yeah, kind of ruthless pragmatism. So I feel like there is some, when the Cubs signed Stroman, there was some like attempted dunks. I think real Russell Westbrook at the end of the game left-handed dunks off the front of the rim, but there was some Twitter attempted dunks by people who were like, oh, all you people who said Jed wouldn't do anything, suck it. Let me give you, like, I think we're almost in an abusive relationship situation, some Cubs Twitter, where it's like, see, Jed's got a plan. He took 8 steps back so he could go 5 steps forward. It's like, you still lost 3 steps. And so this is what it is. I looked up projected
CDC
WAR.
Says Jed Hoyer is a perfect
Yes, exactly. The CDC says we only have to wait a couple more days till we sign Correa. So projected WAR. Let's say the Cubs sign Marcus Stroman, the best pitcher. You could argue the best pitcher in free agency this year. They signed him. Absolutely wonderful. Let's say they signed Carlos Correa. arguably the best position player on the out of everybody available. Fantastic. That's now we're assuming for this argument that they do that. And they signed Jan Gomes, a very good backup catcher. Very good moves. Those guys together, according to Fangraphs, are projected for 8.8 wins above replacement together next year. And Correa is doing a lot of that lifting. He's projected at 5.1. So 8.8 for those guys. Fangraphs projects Javi, KB, Rizzo, and Schwarber at 10.1. So projections aren't reality necessarily, but just for the sake of argument, the core four guys that we had and no longer have and didn't want to pay a single one of them, and then the signings the Cubs would do this offseason, we're still coming up behind in that. And I know there's money differences, but I think if we look at the money differences for what Correa is going to get, I don't know how much, how much, if at any, cheaper this road would be, So, and there's prospects that came over and trade, so it's not exactly equal, but I just wanted to put that point out there that like you can move around a lot of pieces and still be worse.
What is Wade Miley's projected worth?
That's a good question, Adam, and that probably puts it closer to I'm gonna
guess it's 1.1.
I'll find it. I'll look it up. You talk for a second while I do this stat work.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And we've talked about this so much that I don't want to go over it again. But like the Cubs doing what they did at the trade deadline made sense in that moment, but only because of the mismanagement of letting it get to that moment.
Absolutely. And now that we're at this moment, you got to do Correa or you got to do Story and another thing, So hopefully, once there's baseball again, we'll be talking about that. Again, do you have what's on your mind baseball wise before we get into just going over some Sahadev predictions for the year?
Did you find Wade Miley's WAR?
It at 1.9 WAR.
Hey, even better than I thought. So that does, in that scenario, it does kind of even
that would
out.
Bump it up. Yeah.
There you go. That's actually pretty. That's 1.9 it's not bad for.
No, and he was worth
Miles,
more than that last year.
Yeah.
Right.
And a 1 year, $10 million deal, I think is what we got him for. Well, I would say before we move on, we talked a lot about Carlos Correa being a part of a cheating team, and one way that people cheat when they're betting on sports is point shaving. But it's not illegal.
I think I do.
Ball shaving.
Ball shaving is not illegal. It might be in some countries. I don't know, but yes, it is not. And if you're gonna shave about your balls, how would you recommend people do it, Adam?
Well, I tell you what, if you did No Shave November and that extended to your whole body and you let it go through December, you're probably very much in need of a close shave right now, or whatever length shave you would like. So
yeah, you Mandy Patinkin and Homeland looking ass.
If you go to Manscaped and you use promo code AWAYGAMES, you will get 20% off your entire order plus free international shipping. You can get the lawnmower 4.0. I don't think the 5 is available yet, but Lord knows what they're working on for that.
Elon Musk has his people working on it right now.
Don't look up. It's gonna be a great year. We're very excited about Manscaped, and you should be too. So if you need some grooming, if you need some comfortable underwear, if you need a shirt that says Manscaped for some reason that Kevin and I don't understand, but that's your choice.
Yeah, exactly. It's up to you.
There's only one place to do it, and that's Manscaped. Promo code AWAYGAMES.
Promo code AWAYGAMES, 20% off, free shipping, helping us. So, cool.
Let's talk about the Sahadev piece.
Sahadev. And guys, if you're, Adam and I are pretty casual about the business side of things here. Sometimes we just end up recommending other businesses to you, even ones that aren't paying us, even though Manscaped is promo code AWAYGAMES. But The Athletic, if you're not subscribed to it, just do it. Like the best baseball writing for the Cubs is happening there between Sahadev and Mooney. They're different writers. They're not. But I think they're complementary and they're great. So, and
they're not Jesse Rogers, and that says a lot.
And you can't teach that. That is, you either are or you aren't. It's binary, and these guys are not Jesse Rogers. Some of their greatest qualities. So they Sahadev did a five five predictions for the 2022 Cubs. Prediction one: the Cubs will have 5 top 100 prospects on a midseason prospect list. So right now, the Cubs on a top 100 list basically have Brennan Davis. The end is I believe there might be a one that has Christian Hernandez, the 18-year-old shortstop, on one of the lists. I'm not sure if it's 100. It might be one of those that goes over 100 for their top list. But
and did he come over in the Darvish trade, or is that one of the
Christian Hernandez was just an international signing, straight up.
Oh, right. Okay.
He was basically the top prospect in his international class, and the Cubs just gave him a bunch of money, and they signed his younger brother last year too. So his younger brother, I think his name is Alexis. Don't quote me, but his younger brother's not considered as great a prospect. But Christian Hernandez one of the comps he's gotten. He's 18, so comps are ridiculous. But Correa is one of the names because he's a 6 foot. He's a long shortstop. I think he's 6'1", 6'2" right now, and possibly still growing. So, but yeah, so Sahadev has he says he's picking 5 on a top 100 list for the midseason.
And did he say who?
Yeah, he's the ones he named. So Brennan Davis, Owen Casey is on the away games top prospect list. We'd have him at number 2. I'll say Owen Casey is the Canadian outfielder / some people think he might have to move to first base. He came over in the Darvish deal. Big power, some top of the minor leagues level exit velocity, and he ended the year in low A ball at Myrtle Beach last year. James Triantos, who the Cubs got in the second round last year, he was drafted as a shortstop, probably more of a second base, third base guy. Just makes all the contact in the world. Looks like that might be a genuinely special bat. Caleb Killian is another name he mentions. Came over in the Chris Bryant deal, threw 6 perfect innings in the Arizona Fall League Championship game. The other names he mentions: Kevin Alcantara, who the Cubs got in the Rizzo deal, 6'6" center fielder. Pete Crow Armstrong, who came over in the Javi Baez deal. Plus super plus defense in center field, questionable offense. I feel like I know a guy, Albert Almora, who was like that. And then he mentioned Jordan Wicks, who was the Kansas State left-handed pitcher Cubs picked in the first round, and Drew Gray, another left-handed pitcher who they picked last year. Drew Gray is not going to hop up that quickly. I'll just say that. But I think his point basically is that the Cubs have a handful of guys, and they have the depth in the system is much better than it was last year, and a couple of those guys are going to take leaps. And if they do, you're looking at a couple more at least top 100 guys. 5 might be a little optimistic, but yeah.
Well, and no knock on Adbert Alzolay or Braylon Marquez, but it would be very satisfying if within the next 3 to 5 years the Cubs do develop their own top-end starter from the system, because it's been a long time.
Been a real long time. The last, I think we can, Alzolay and possibly Steele are knocking on the door of being homegrown, genuine starters. And I give some credit to Kyle Hendricks, even though the Cubs traded for him, he was still in the minors with them. And so that's kind of homegrown to me. But if you go legit draft, develop, and then a mainstay starter, it's been since Jeff Samardzija. It has been a really long time. Yeah. So, so that's prediction number 1. Do you have any favorite prospects of those names, Adam? I know you're not as much of a prospect head as I am.
I'm not. I mean, from what I know of Jordan Wicks, it seems like he's someone who would have one of the shortest potential times between being drafted and being in the big leagues, just because of the profile that he has and kind of where his stuff is at.
Yeah,
would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. He played in college in a good conference. He played at Kansas State, so he played against high-end competition, performed very well, struck out a ton of guys. Left-handed pitcher, seems to have good control, and a super plus changeup, and having a real plus, any plus pitch in addition to a decent fastball. I think you could definitely see him moving pretty quickly. For sure.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe he also has the kind of like Ethan Roberts glasses look.
Yeah, he's a glasses up guy. Yes, he is for sure. So and Ethan Roberts, I think a prediction for me is going to be good in Wrigley this year when it happens. And Sahadev's second sort of beat to this was the pitching development takes a step forward with on-field results. which I certainly hope. And Sahadev and I believe Mooney teamed up to write a piece going into the Cubs' change in pitching development philosophy last year. And over the past couple of years, I guess they've really focused on velocity above and beyond everything, like trying to get guys throwing as hard as they possibly can, bumping that velocity early in their careers so they know what they'll be working with going forward, and then so they can plan from there, which makes sense in one way. And in another way, you look at everyone who the Cubs injured and how they had a more beat up pitching staff, more beat up pitchers in the minor leagues than most teams. So, which seems like the obvious downside to this kind of an approach. Right. So, so who knows about that? But he's predicting the pitching development takes a step forward with on-field results, and it kind of has to, I guess. Like, it's a low bar, kind of.
Yeah. Let's see. Did you have anything else?
Craig Breslow emerges as a potential team president candidate. Who cares? Kind of. Craig Breslow seems smart. Who gives a shit? I honestly can't think of a prediction I care less about than someone in the Cubs organization becoming a team president candidate for someone else. Okay. Right. He predicts Schwindel for real. Wisdom struggles. How do you feel about that?
I think I could see that being the case. I think there is a chance that Wisdom kind of becomes the next David Bodie, where it's like he'll stick in the majors but not be able to replicate some of the magic that we saw from him early on. But I'm not really basing that on anything. It's just a feeling I have.
I think it's just that Wisdom, struck out about 40% of the time, which basically no one else did. The only other guys who strike out that much are Javi, which strikes out less, actually, even, in his high strikeout years, strikes out significantly less. Down around, I think, was 33-ish%, which is still a ton last year. And then, Joey Gallo, he mentions too, who has like massive defensive value and also takes a bazillion walks. So
right, and I think Schwindel, his profile is more that of someone who I could see that being something that sticks. Whereas I feel like once people started to figure Wisdom out and just pitch him the right way, he struggled a lot. But maybe he makes the adjustment. Who knows?
Yeah, Wisdom said that it's difficult to make major adjustments like that in season, and Wisdom's a guy who came up and had huge success as he was a first round draft pick. He has that pedigree. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what kind of changes he comes in with next year. But yeah, Schwindel seems to have. I feel like Schwindel's floor is pretty high. I think the amount of contact he makes, the quality of it, like. I think he'll be at least solid. So I think that's.
I mean, best case, he's like a DJ LeMahieu type, not including how DJ LeMahieu played last year.
Oh, sure. Right. You're saying like as a sort of later in career offensive breakout, kind of with like a lot of contact and enough pop.
Right.
And then
no matter what happens with Wisdom, I mean, he's a babe. Let's be honest.
People are saying it. People are saying it frequently online that Patrick Wisdom is
his crip walking above replacement is it's pretty high.
Marcus Stroman was shouting out that crip walking. He commented on it because Stroman will dance in the warm up a little bit. There's if you look it up, Stroman has one, I think, dancing around the outfield in Toronto, and he seemed to be genuinely shocked and impressed with Wisdom's footwork out there. And Sadov's last prediction, the Cubs add a pair of veteran relievers who end up performing very well. I think with this kind of a thing, you're thinking more along the lines of like the Jeremy Jeffress kind of signing, like than the Craig Kimbrell, but yeah, you figure they'll probably throw, they'll sign a couple relievers for $2 million who will be fine,
Yeah, I'm least concerned about the Cubs relief depth. I feel like they're fairly well set.
Yeah, same. And Brad Wick, by the way, of I think 17 plus innings and giving up 0 earned runs last year, and of just being a big fucking dude, like a 6'9" lefty who was striking out a ton of people last year, but has had some heart problems. He seems to be he had a procedure done, and he seems to be feeling great. He was like tweeting, he was tweeting this week. So Brad Wick being back in the mix would be awesome for that bullpen too.
Yeah. Last thing that I had, And this, of course, presumes a situation where number one, the baseball season actually happens when it's supposed to, and number two, COVID is at least at bay enough for us to go do things. Are there any particular series and or trips that you're looking at on this Cubs schedule that are exciting to you?
Oh man, that's a good question. I haven't. Do you have the schedule up?
I don't have it up, but off the top of my head, I will tell you that over the weekend that I think is either on your birthday or like precedes your birthday, the Cubs play at Yankee Stadium for 3
Okay.
games, which will be fun. I know the Cubs are at Citi Field in September, so that could be one of those where it's like, are both teams in it? Are they both out of it? Is it worth like what's happening by that
Right.
point?
Almost best case scenario, it feels like it'll be like one of those very intense City Field trips that you and I have had, where if both teams are good,
Right.
it's not the most comfortable place to be as a Cubs fan, unless the Cubs go up like 8 early and just stay that way.
Right.
But
And then the Cubs play in Toronto in late August. That was a trip that I was planning to make last year, or 2020 rather. That of course didn't happen. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Blue Jays, because I believe that Toronto is not allowing people in who are not vaccinated to play. So I don't know how that's affecting the Raptors or the Maple Leafs.
yeah, so the Cubs will have Wilson Contreras. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cubs will re-sign Arrieta just for the Toronto trip.
yeah. We would have basically Kyle Hendricks throwing to Wilson Contreras, from what I understand, if we're only letting vaccinated players in. And Ian Happ.
But the Toronto, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I think in general the Cubs are probably more vaccinated than we think, just because of the money at stake. Like that seems to be kind of across all sports, is that a lot of people, I think major like professional sports are 90+% vaccinated, which is better
professionals
than the population.
Absolutely. Professional sports are. The Cubs are not at 90. The Cubs were one of the teams below the, I think, 85% or whatever it was that they needed. So we're elite. We were elite in that way, but lost some of the major offenders. Novak Djokovic, you're a tennis guy. You see, he might not be let into Australia for the same reason.
And he shouldn't be. People were very upset when he yesterday was like, "Hey, I got an exemption. See you in a couple of weeks."
Yeah, because
especially for a country that's so strict about it.
Yeah, and when the exemption is because you feel like it, like it's not exemption.
Good.
Yeah, because you're good at tennis. That's not exemption.
But I will say, speaking of tennis, the other trip that's on my radar is that prior to the U.S. Open in New York, they do like a warm-up tournament called the U.S. Open Series that's in Cincinnati.
Oh.
And it just so happens that tournament lines up with one of the times the Cubs are in Cincinnati, a stadium I have not been to. So I'm thinking of maybe a little weekend baseball/tennis trip.
That's pretty cool. That's not bad. I think the Cincy Stadium is kind of underrated. It was designed by the same guy who did the Pittsburgh Stadium, and it has a lot of the same elements, but the colors, I think, aren't as aesthetically pleasing. There's not the same bridge in the background. But I've never seen a baseball game in Toronto. I did see my Ball State fighting football Cardinals lose to Rutgers as Ray Rice, that piece of shit, ran for 200+ yards. So I've been in that stadium, so I guess I can cross it off, but I haven't been in it for a baseball game. So I would like to do that, and that's drivable for us in New York. Yankee. I have a friend who has season tickets right on the left field foul pole. So I was going to go when the Cubs were originally scheduled to play them. So I'll definitely do that. That's a good and easy one. The stadiums I have to cross off in the National League that are doable driving wise, I think are like, I've never been to Atlanta, weirdly, but also I'm not psyched about it. I know you went.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go to Miami. I don't want to do that one. So I don't give a shit about that. I've never been to San Francisco. So me and our friend Ken Schultz did Denver, and I like San Fran. I've been trying to get in over there at the Punchline to do in San Fran. So if I can get something going there, I would that would be my number one to cross off, I think.
Other than maybe Pittsburgh. Actually, no, I'm going to say it. San Francisco of the modern stadiums is my favorite.
Yeah, I think it looks great on TV. So, and I haven't been in that city since I was 3 years old. So that was where my first memory was. My first human memory was from San Francisco, like when I lived there. So, yeah.
There you go.
So we'll go back. Cool. Any parting thoughts?
No, and you know what? I got nothing to plug. How about you?
Hey, nothing to plug, baby. I'll plug. Well, I'll say we do have something to plug. If you're a Bulls fan, Adam does a basketball podcast you can listen to.
That is true.
They've been
Horse.
fun.
You can find us at Horse Hoops on Instagram or Horse_Hoops on Twitter, because whoever had at Horse Hoops is banned from Twitter.
God, I want to see what they were. What's Horse Hoops tweeting that is getting you
It's like
banned?
a running joke. Every episode we give a different reason for why Horse Hoops is banned.
That's perfect. And if you're, for me, if you are watching Sex and the City or the new series, and just like that, if you're watching it or hate watching it, myself and my friend John Daly do a fun little podcast. We're called Sex and the Cityots. We've done every episode of that series. We have a good time doing it. So check that out. And hopefully there will be baseball again. And we'll come back when there's something to talk about, or in 2 weeks or something. We'll keep
We're going to try to get some interviews. Maybe DeMar DeRozan will come on the pod. Who knows?
Hey, there we go. Let's talk baseball tomorrow at Away Games Pod on Twitter, Instagram. We'll see you later.